Welcome to the Civil 20 TST Working Group of G20, where we are dedicated to promoting access to and use of technology, enhanced security, and improved transparency for advanced societal well-being. This year, we are proud to announce that Amma, Shri Mata Amritanandamayi Devi, is the chair of C20 India 2023, and we are excited to work under her leadership. In today's world, due to the advancement of technology, countries and communities are interconnected more than ever. Because of the increasing role technology has in our lives, it is crucial that we understand its impact on our societies. Our working group will explore the wide-ranging roles and influence of civil society organizations in promoting effective policymaking that leverages technology and strengthens security and transparency for the betterment of the world. We will focus on access and affordability of innovative technologies for social impact, with a special emphasis on vulnerable communities such as children, women, and the disabled. We aim to facilitate transparency through platforms for advocacy, comprehensive assessments, and implementation of regulatory measures. We will explore responsible use of the internet and media to ensure security and harmony for all. Our team will also explore the importance of integrating a compassion-driven outlook on technology-enabled innovation strategies. We are committed to addressing these issues by supporting long-term holistic solutions for building societies that are technology-empowered, secure, and held accountable by their transparency to their citizens. The insights from civil society organizations are vital for building technologies that enable automated decision-making and knowledge by supporting societal development based on equity and inclusivity. Join us in our efforts to promote access to technology, to enhance security, and to improve transparency for advancing the well-being of society. You are invited to participate in our webinars and policy workshops and share successful project examples with us. Together, we can make a positive impact on the world.
So thank you all very much for joining us today. It's a cultural tradition in India to start every event with a prayer. So I would request Savita, my colleague, to please lead us in a prayer.
Yeah. Let's thank you, Amar. Hello, everybody. Let's take this opportunity to chant a small prayer for the peace of all the living beings in this world. This prayer basically means let all beings in this world be happy and blissful, and may my thoughts, words, and actions contribute in some way to that happiness and freedom for all. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you very much, Savita, for that beautiful prayer. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Gilad Grassel. I work at Amrita University, and I'm one of the coordinators for our working group. I'm just going to take you through a little slide deck. I'll try to keep it very brief to explain what we're trying to do here today and in general. So let me just share my screen. Dear participants and colleagues, welcome to Civil 20, the Technology, Security, and Transparency Working Group's policy discussion on artificial and data for society. As you know, Civil 20 is an official engagement group of the G20, and we are so honored to have you here and deeply appreciate the time that you've taken out of your very busy schedule to spend the next 2 hours with us. So a short introduction, a bit of background. The G20 member countries represent around 85% of the global GDP, over 75% of the global trade, and about 2/3 of the world's population. And while we know that it can often feel frustrating when trying to change the world, no matter what you do, it can feel insignificant. Therefore, the theme of this year's Civil 20 engagement group is You Are the Light, which symbolizes the flame of hope, self-motivation, and selfless service. It is a reminder to ourselves that even though we may not directly experience the desired results of our action, of our efforts, our light is shining and is having a positive impact on the world. Just a little bit about our university, Amrita University, which is running our part of the C20. Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham is one of the youngest, fastest growing academic and research institutions in India. The vision and mission of the university is threefold. 1, education for life and living. 2, compassion-driven research. And 3, global impact. In its 20 years since inception, it has scaled to become the 41st best university in the world, or top 50, in terms of the impact it has been able to create as per the Impact Rankings Forum for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Within India, amongst 1,000 plus universities ranked, we are 5th best. A little bit about the C20 structure. The C20 chair is held by Mata Amritanandamayi Devi, the Chancellor of Amrita University and a worldwide humanitarian. The C20 principal coordinator is Ambassador Vijay Nambiar, who is the main point of contact between the external stakeholders and the C20 working groups. There is also a Secretariat, Steering Committee, and International Advisory Committee. In total, there are 13 working groups working on 13 different thematic verticals for this year's Civil 20. And for more information, you can visit civil20.net. Our group is titled Technology, Security, and Transparency, or TST for short. Our group has adopted a holistic approach to developing a set of policy recommendations. We aim to collect relevant input from all civil society organizations from all over the world. And we believe that policy must be evidence-based, and thus we look to you to share your experience. In the C20 process, we are doing our best to reach out to the entire world. All the green countries you see here have CSOs, NGOs, and nonprofits, which we have reached out to and contacted. And if you have anyone in your network that you believe should be included or would like to be included, please let us know. Our personal goal is to turn that whole map green. So what is the output of this meeting? What are we doing here today? So we need to first understand that the output of a C20 engagement group is a policy pack of recommendations which we send to the G20 countries, to the leadership. And this specific meeting will support the formulation of our zero draft policy. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what our topic is for today. So I'm going to start with an analogy that our Chancellor, Mata Amritanandamayi, uses frequently, which is that technology is like fire. With fire, you can cook a meal, which is what we see here, someone cooking a nice meal, and everyone likes a good meal. But the problem is that with fire, you can also burn down a house by accident, but it can happen. And we can never really blame fire itself. It's really how we use it. And that's an analogy I would like to extend towards AI and data, because AI can be used to achieve incredible accomplishments. You can draw pictures, it can talk to people naturally, it can discover new drugs, it can teach chess players new strategies, it can transcribe our speech into words for those who cannot hear. It can also be used to circulate misinformation, perpetuate cultural biases, and cause emotional harm. And on data collection, it is used to fuel both AI, and it's also used to tailor our personal experiences. So the question I hope you're all asking is, where are the firefighters? Where are the firefighters for our AI and data society? I pose you this question, would you like to live in a place where fires are common and there's no organized method to control them? Probably not. I don't think anyone would. But nobody today will say we should outlaw fire, that we should never use it. Instead, we have a series of very organized regulations, laws, and practices so that we can use it safely. So some people today feel like, I've read this, I'm sure everyone has read this. Some people feel like we should stop using AI or data until we can fully understand it. Don't use it. And others feel like we're just exploring what AI can do and its benefits largely outweigh the negatives. I don't think anybody would argue that there is no potential negative. I think everyone does understand that. But the goal of today's discussion is to find the practical, applicable, and doable actions, policy recommendations, which will allow us to use AI and data safely. So for the format of our upcoming discussion, we are going to call on each speaker one by one. We have distributed a list ahead of time over email. We asked you that if you would not like to speak, to please let us know. So if we call on you and you don't want to speak, just say, sorry, that's not me. I don't want to speak. And if you aren't on the list and you've joined and you do want to speak, please let us know in the chat what your organization is, where you're from, and we will try to slot you in if there's time remaining. So the background, the format is, we want you to tell us, please tell us for 1 minute, where does your work take place? What do you do? And do you work with a specific demographic? Then please tell us in 2 minutes, key issues and your proposed solutions. What are the key issues to be addressed at the G20 level? How could better policy mitigate and bring solutions to these problems? And if possible, we really want suggestions of measurable and actionable policy. Our goal is that after every 4 or 5 speakers, we will pause for questions from the audience, from each other. As the moderator, I will do my very best to try and keep us on time and on topic. So let me stop my share. And without further ado, I would like to call our first speaker, who I do believe is Ms. Nidhi Sinha from the Center for AI and Digital Policy.
Yes, hi, hello.
Hi.
Nice to meet all of you. My name is Nidhi Sinha. I'm a research fellow for the Center for AI and Digital Policy. We are a global research organization. We've been advising national governments and international organizations on AI and digital policy. And we publish an annual report reviewing and assessing AI policies and practices around the world. You can find access to our 2022 report on using the QR code on the left of the screen, but you can also find it online at caidp.org. We've been consistently engaged with the work of the G20, and our webpage about the G20 and our previous involvement can be found at that link. AI has become increasingly prevalent in everyday life. It makes decisions for employment, education, housing, and basic freedoms. And as exciting and as powerful as this tool is, it can also deepen marginalization. When there's a lack of diversity in both the developers and the data sets, we're at risk of having biased algorithms. This can lead to severe effects. Using historical data for aspects such as creditworthiness and job applications results in perpetuated discrimination. When there's a lack of diversity in healthcare AI systems, there is inaccurate diagnosis for marginalized groups, and deepfakes as a whole are disproportionately used to victimize women. Especially when there's a lack of diversity with developers, a majority of population is not kept in mind when these algorithms are being designed in the first place. It's up to lawmakers to ensure that fundamental rights and public safety are both being protected. If you could go to the next slide. We acknowledge and commend the G20 for its recent successes. We commend the consistent emphasis on the need for human-centric AI. We see this with the establishment of the G20 AI guidelines in 2019, the commitment to privacy-enhancing technologies, and the support for the UNESCO recommendation on AI. So our recommendations for the G20 are to endorse red lines for certain AI deployments that violate fundamental human rights. These are deployments such as social scoring, mass surveillance, predictive policing, and biometric categorization. We urge the G20 to prohibit the deployment of lethal autonomous weapons and to adopt new algorithmic transparency laws. We urge them to enact appropriate oversight mechanisms to maintain accountability, especially for AI systems that have more human rights sensitive use cases. We encourage them to create an ethical impact assessment to identify and mitigate risks in AI systems before the consequences get out of hand. And we also urge them to adopt a strong statement against algorithmic bias. We believe these recommendations will lead to increased accountability and transparency and trust between the people who are using these algorithms and the people creating them. And yeah, so thank you so much for listening to my presentation. We do have a really exciting event on April 6th. We are hosting an AI roundtable where we are encouraging a discussion about AI policy and events. It'll be taking place in DC. It'll also be taking place online. And if you keep up to date on our website or on our LinkedIn, you'll be able to get more details as time comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nidhi. It was very nice, very compact. Appreciate you staying on time for us. And I'd like to now call the next speaker is Valerie Milanes.
Okay, so I will start. My name is Valeria Milanes. I'm the Executive Director of Asociación por los Derechos Civiles, or Association for Civil Rights, based in Argentina. We work for almost 30 years in fundamental rights and strengthening the democratic system. But the last years, we focused very strongly in the intersection of fundamental rights and technologies. And we are working not only in Argentina, though we are a national organization, but strengthening dialogues from our country to the region that we are part of and globally. And we work with a lot of constituencies because we work with the broad array of fundamental rights. In this sense, and regarding artificial intelligence, I would like to highlight a paradox that we face when we are participating in global and pretty advanced conversations regarding this technology. We are part of OECD conversations, UN conversations, UNESCO conversations, to name some. And the contrast that we have when we want to talk about policy matters related AI in our country, and I will refer to my country, but I know that the situation is also present in several countries, mostly based in the global south, is that the conversations here seems delayed. So how, and this is an issue that I want to bring, because I think the G20 and the C20 as part of it can further explore how can we bring this disparity that it was really emphasized during and before the pandemic, and how can we make the most to provide meaningful policy conversations. In my country, for example, we participated in a lot of these conversations, bringing suggestions, and I will emphasize at least three. There are more, but I will emphasize three. One is taking international human rights standards as a part of every consideration, analysis, and so on of artificial intelligence technology. not only for the private sector, but as well for the public sector. Secondly, explanation as a principle, very related to transparency as a principle, though it is not exactly the same. Explanations should be given not only to the people by itself, but as to the society as a whole. And another thing that I want to highlight is that the uses to which artificial intelligence should not be used should be agreed and clarified. In our societies here in the South of America, we have very, very difficult situations with surveillance and with security goals, which are really, really detrimental given the history our countries have and my country have. So this is something that we want to stress. And lastly, recognize expressly when anybody is facing, private sector and public sector is facing the development and the deployment of artificial intelligence technology, that there are prejudice and that there are biases that are part of the society and should be taken into account from the very beginning. Of course, taking into account the whole cycle of the technology, including, and this is very, very important, the confirmation of the data set. So I will finish here, and of course, we will keep on participating in these conversations and providing written further input shortly. So thank you so much, and congratulations on the effort.
Thank you very much, Valeria, for your very insightful feedback. Can I ask one quick question? I know I said we'd wait for questions, but you said at the beginning that it's been delayed. The conversation has been delayed.
Yes, the conversations are delayed because the disparity of the setting of the technology is quite huge. The countries in the global north are the ones that are setting the frame for international discussions. And there are conversations about quantum technology. Here in our countries, we are still talking about the present data protection systems. And despite it's not the same, and of course I am simplifying and it's not the scenario likewise, I want to highlight the disparity. And it's not possible to think that we, in our conversations, can keep the pace of the northern conversations, because the situation that we are trying to analyze all of this is very, very different and is changing by the minute. Mm-hmm. So we have a challenge, and the C20 countries, Argentina is part of it, are not in the same situation to talk about this. So I think that is very important, and I want to address here the last question you formulated in your opening presentation. I think, how can we make this work? I think that we need to strengthen mechanisms on sustainable ways and permanent ways, not over a year, because it's not possible, to keep meaningful conversations and ways to implement these things between the North and the countries in the South.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Valeria. And Ryan is after Narendra. So Ryan from For Humanity, you look ready to go. I think we would like that. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And I think you have my slides. You want to run those?
Yes, we do. Priya, do you mind?
Thank you very much. My name is Ryan Carrier. I'm the Executive Director of For Humanity. You can run the next slide ahead. For Humanity is a US-based, but really only structurally based in the United States, as we are more than 1,300 persons from 81 countries around the world. We are a nonprofit public charity with a singular mission, and that mission is to examine and analyze downside risks associated with AI, algorithmic, and autonomous systems, and to engage in risk mitigations. And the idea of these risk mitigations is, how do we take all of these systems where they are, mitigate risks as much as we can? Why? So that we get the optimal benefit from these tools for humanity, and thus the origin of the name as well. Our primary focus on the next slide, please, is independent audit of AI systems. We advocate, build, support, encourage, teach this broad ecosystem of independent audit of AI systems modeled on the financial audit track record of more than 50 plus years, but adapted and adopted to socio-technical systems. And instead of focusing on things like debits and credits and balance sheets, we are bringing governance, oversight, and accountability to 5 key areas of risk: ethics, bias, privacy, trust, and cybersecurity. Holistically identifying risks and negative outcomes for humans. Every human is welcome inside of For Humanity, where we crowdsource transparently. We've already done more than 6,000 lines of audit. We work in many countries around the world. For example, Team India is more than 80 persons, and we've responded to a series of government inquiries, as well as drafted audit requirements for the first failed digital act, and are prepared for the newest one looking to come for the monsoon session. The process of independent audit of AI systems is one where For Humanity holds up the ecosystem on behalf of auditors, pre-audit service providers, hardware, software, platform builders, all those who would seek compliance with laws. The audit rules we create are jurisdictionally sensitive, and they're crowdsourced and transparently built. And when this system can be established, it actually becomes a better system than the law itself, because it encourages proactive compliance rather than reactive. Laws are broken and enforcement actions happen. The problem when laws are broken is people are hurt. When you require a mandatory independent audit of AI systems, and we're a long way away from that, and that's okay. It's a journey. We have a lot of capacity to build. But what we are in the process of establishing is the ability to achieve that by both creating government-approved certification schemes. We have no authority at For Humanity, and we seek no authority. What we intend to do is take these audit criteria on behalf of people to governments and regulators all around the world, seeking their approval for these certification schemes. And then we license those schemes and we train people to be For Humanity certified auditors, the CPAs of the world. We've built a very large ecosystem, and our community is growing very quickly, and it is open literally to every human. And we invite you all to come in through our website. You can also take our classes. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay the entire time today because we are teaching our very first class today on the EU AI Act For Humanity Certified Auditor class. And so I'm teaching that class. I have to be there in a little bit, in about a half hour. But I thank you for this time today. If you slide ahead to the next page, what you'll find is a whole series of articles and publications that are available to all of you. All of our courses are free at For Humanity University. It's only the certifications that come with a fee, so the knowledge is available to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I do have one quick question. So I had gone through your website a day or two ago, and I loved your presentation now. And actually, I think this is an excellent idea. Obviously, it's an excellent idea. But my question is, have you been auditing companies? Has anyone agreed for it yet?
No, we're at the stage where we have a series of submissions to governments, UK and the EU in particular. Waiting on government approvals, like the EU AI Act, for example. The law is not even enforced yet. Mm-hmm. So we're just trying to stay ahead and ensuring that we have auditable criteria. One of the big next steps that we'll be doing is pilot programs with a lot of companies around the world. And under the EU AI Act, they have regulatory sandbox capability. This is also something I would encourage through the G20, is that government and private partnerships in the form of regulatory sandboxes to test out compliance just along these lines. We expect to be doing a lot of that in Europe under the EU AI Act to basically prove out what this compliance looks like. I can tell you it looks good and robust, but until you've done it, and done it a lot, you can't find all the mistakes or all the issues or all the holes and all the gaps. We offer all of this with great humility of We think we're doing the right things. We think we've got the very good ideas, but it's not perfect. Perfect is actually our enemy. Because if we wait for perfect, we'll never get anything done. So
Sure.
Gilad, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And is that sandbox, that's an open tool that you're going to provide for everyone, or that's something people have to register to use?
It's not ours. You want to do regulatory sandboxes with the blessing of the government. So for example, under the EU AI Act, they've written in already that each of the member states can have these regulatory sandboxes. And so in supporting of that, we work with standards bodies, we work with companies, we work with governments, and we want to help establish and set up those sandboxes to test portions and aspects of what is a very thick and dense law. So you really do them in consultation with and almost partnership with the government.
Okay, thank you so much, Ryan, for your time. Since you are going to be having to go before we're maybe going to get to other people than me asking questions, are there any questions real quick from the chat? Just, I want to catch Ryan while he's still here. So let's just ask everybody there. We have one comment from Nava Subramaniam who says, I think clear standards of audit should be developed as soon as possible. Great to see accounting finance concepts merging. I think we all agree with that. Anyone else?
And we have schemes in place already. They are openly reviewable inside of our community, so people can begin to look at what the details of an audit and audit criteria look like.
Amazing. Okay, Ryan, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
And have a great day. Have a great first class. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Soledad Magnone. And I'm really sorry, everyone, if I say your name wrong. I'm sure I'm saying them all wrong, except for the American ones like me. But I'm trying. So yes, Soledad.
Hello.
Hello, great.
Yes, it's Soledad Magnone. It's perfect. No worries.
It sounds like what I said at all.
No problem. I'm completely inadequate to pronounce so many languages. I'm trying to get better, also working on language justice and how to facilitate all these conversations globally in a way so that English is not the dominant language. I don't know how much time I have. I'm sorry,
you have about 5 minutes, roughly.
5 minutes.
Looking at how things are going, I think you have about 5 minutes, yeah.
Okay, great. I want to be brief because in the interest of time, and I want to focus more on listening others and having the privilege of being present here today. Thank you so much for the invitation. HACLEC is a very small initiative. It started by the end of the 2020. It's a non-formal organization co-coordinated with youth and civil society organizations. So far, our projects have been funded by LACNIC or Derechos Digitales and Mozilla Foundation. And we focus on education and the intersections between education, digital technologies, and human rights, with a particular focus on youth participation. And we do this to research, to educate, and to advocate for these critical digital education practices to be included in curriculum and to get funding for also programs in informal educational settings. Critical digital education hinges upon using technology to learn, but most importantly, to understand the effects of digital technologies. How is this impacting us individually, as a society, and within the environment? And then we want these critical digital education practices to encourage more people to take part, to actively engage in developing alternative technologies, in digital policies that are aligned with human rights, in academics to be researching which are the gaps that are going to continuously be emerging, and do that also hands in hands with civil society organizations that are on the ground. Yes, so for example, we've done some of our most known campaigns have been the No Minor Futures campaign that was supported by the Creative Media Awards from the Mozilla Foundation. And this was to use social media, create a collaborative educational campaign on social media with adolescents from around the world to showcase stories about their hopes and fears in relation to artificial intelligence. So through this, we had a roadmap of online virtual workshops where we invited different stakeholders, technologists, activists, academics from different institutions from around the world to talk about their research and their projects and make this accessible for youth. And then we created this dialogic spaces, so for also adults to learn and to listen, young people. And then the results, we had animated character stories telling all these brief different experiences from the participating youth, and we launched it in a collaborative campaign with young influencers from other regions of the world. And we always share the process, so what the workshops were about, which topics. We have video bites, 10 minutes videos of the presentations from each of the organizations that also took part in the workshops. And the learnings from the experience on a blog post and on podcasts to also make all this knowledge and bend academic research into practice, and repurpose social media and all the orchestrate podcast and social media campaigns and videos, and make it more engaging and accessible for everyone to have this conversation. In Latin America, with less resources supported by tactical tech, we did something similar called the Saga de Tox de Datos Latine, which colleagues from Internet Bolivia took part in. I'm not Internet Bolivia, I'm Haclac. I'm going to put the links on I'm sorry I clarified that, my colleagues, because showed that Bolivia was in gray and I was instantly, and they were listed on the email to take part. So yes, the Saga de Tox de Datos Latine had a similar approach, using social media, not to scroll, to create the content that we want to see, to learn about digital security, privacy, well-being, which are the topics that young people are more interested in. Environmental issues, gender issues, mental well-being. This is the elephant in the room, and how we can harness the knowledge across generations and all the potential of the social media platforms to learn, share, and materialize the digital societies that we want. And I'm sharing the links, and anyone who's interested, I'm more than happy to connect afterwards.
Yes. So incredible. I mean, I couldn't quite, to be completely honest, I couldn't follow every single thing you said because you gave so much information. But what I completely understood is that you're doing a lot of work online with youth and exposing them and getting their ideas and finding out from them their experience. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did I summarize it?
Yes. The
Okay.
critical digital education practices and the research is to connect generations, of course. So much pressure is being put on young people, and all the decisions are being made by adults. Whereas 1/3 of internet users online by 2015 were under 18 years old, and that number even doubles in countries from the majority world. So it is important, it is their right to be included in matters that affect them. So how do we do it?
My question for you though is, what did you learn? I know you can't answer all of it, but can you tell us in 2 lines or 3 lines, what did you really learn from these amazing projects?
That's such a good question, because sometimes I make sense of why am I doing this? Because it's such a push for curiosity, and sometimes I'm feeling that I'm the one that's learning more, the most in this process. With the fresh look from young people, I'm constantly getting to see their vision that is more positive, and all the possibilities, and branching out to the great impact that technology can have around the world and in small towns, but also the steep consequences too. In Latin America, as our colleagues from ADC in Argentina were saying, it's the most unequal region in the world, and 40% of young people under 14 years old are poor. So, for example, during COVID, there was no online education. And then at the same time, there was a very swift connection process for a lot of people, and not knowing a lot of threats that can come with the privilege of online connection. So I've been learning a lot about co-creating with youth, about the topics that are emerging, about a positive view of how we can make this work for the common good. They have been supporting all these projects even more than adults, and completely selflessly. For me, it's been a great privilege to do so. And how to use social media at times that I've been thinking, oh, I should disconnect completely. But they make it fun and make my days brighter.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Our next speaker is Jillian Diebold from the Center for Data Innovation. Jillian, I do see you, and I hope I pronounced your name closely correct.
Mostly correct.
Almost, sorry. Please tell us how to say your name correctly.
I will. Hello, everyone. My name is Jillian Diebold. So you're very close, just on time. Diebold, I'm a policy analyst at the Center for Data Innovation, which is a research center within the nonprofit Information Technology and Innovation Foundation that studies the intersection of data technology and public policy. And we're based in Washington, D.C. I lead my team's work on data policy and digital inequalities, particularly focusing on what equitable data collection and data sharing looks like. I also work on artificial intelligence in education and open data issues. And pretty much through my research, I'm sort of looking at how we can really increase data collection in an equitable manner to maximize the benefits of data. So this can be done through data sharing mechanisms, through policies that allow for the free flow of data across borders, or through bettering government statistics and implementing different types of smart city data collection tools in cities. So I do a lot of research specifically on what I call the data divide, or the social and economic inequalities that arise when some individuals and communities don't have access to the data collected about them. And as the data economy worldwide continues to develop, those without sufficient data are going to find that many services will work less effectively for them, or maybe even harm them. And this happens often just because of restrictive data policies pertaining to how data can be stored, used, and shared. So, how can policy really help bring solutions to this is that, policymakers can provide the guidance needed for both public and private actors to really realize the promise of data as an enabler for social good. As we've sort of already talked about, data can raise awareness of opportunities to provide services to underserved populations, serve the humanitarian community in deploying real-time crisis response, and enable the development of important AI tools for applications like education and healthcare and financial services, among many other uses. So I have just 4 policy recommendations here, and it would be namely to first collect more data, but more importantly, more good data that can be really put to productive use. So high quality data that really represents all the communities for any use case. And that includes, increasing the types of devices used for data collection. So, data can really propel economic growth and improve quality of life, but only if enough people are creating, collecting, and using it. And another thing that could be done would be, investing in things like alternative data sources. So that, again, can be sort of through sensor data collection and things in the built environment. My second recommendation would be to enhance access to that data that's collected so that consumers and businesses alike can access it and put it to use. And this can be done through things like data portability provisions, open data policies, and open APIs. Next, I think that policymakers should update laws to address the legitimate concerns about privacy and data protection, but they also should be ensuring that people and firms and governments can maximize the enormous societal and economic benefits of data. And then my last recommendation would really be to, for member countries to facilitate data sharing and explore data sharing partnerships, particularly, some different models for data sharing, whether that be, through data cooperatives or consortiums or, bottom-up stakeholder-led rules like data trust. I think there's some really interesting avenues for increased participation from civil society through those types of mechanisms. So I'm going to just keep it brief with those recommendations, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you so much. Can I ask one question that I'm sure you get all the time, but being a machine learning researcher myself and being kind of active a little bit online and reading other people's opinions, a lot of people are really concerned about surveillance. And what I heard you say now was collect more data, use it better, collect more, use it more. And that seems very at odds with a lot of what opinions that I see floating around out there about surveillance, really. So how does that sit for you?
I mean, I think it's a really good point. And the point of my work sort of is to turn that idea and that individualist notion of privacy on its head and sort of support more of a collectivist view. So, data is really only valuable on aggregate, right? So obviously I'm supporting privacy enhancing technologies and things like that. But there's some, I've done a lot of work looking at US government statistics, for example. There's a lot of data gaps and a lot of people that are not represented. So, yes, we are seeing automated systems and decision-making systems sort of, and maybe inadvertently affect some, historically marginalized groups negatively, but that's often because of those data gaps. So you kind of have to fill those data gaps before you can kind of have
more data to fix that
problem. Right. So therefore you do need more data to sort of eliminate some of the harms. So it's a tricky, a lot of trade-offs there, but
so is there a gold standard for privacy or for data collection to not harm individuals but still be used for everyone well? Is there somewhere where you would point
that some of these data sharing mechanisms that I'm doing some research on now, like data trusts, which we've seen some examples of in the European Union, are really interesting because they sort of protect the integrity of data and are completely anonymized and allow that data to be used and worked with in aggregate. And then again, it sort of gives you or I more power over our own data, and sort of we get to choose who kind of is controlling it rather than a private company.
Yeah, that seems very ideal, and I think people would feel much more comfortable knowing how their data is being used, and if people could trust that the organizations who are using their data are actually using for their benefit, I think most people would be happy with that.
Exactly.
Dream. Well, thank you very much, Jillian. I did say your first name correctly, right? Okay, thank you, Jillian. Are there any questions? I think this is a good time to pause for questions. We've had a few speakers go through. I have been looking at the chat a little bit, and I see a little back and forth between the participants, but if there's anyone who has a question, who wants to raise their hand, but from any of the speakers, I think now is a great time. So let's just pause for a moment here. And if anybody would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat for any of the speakers or any of the themes that have come up till now. I'm just scrolling chat, checking real quick. I personally am kind of blown away by everybody who has presented so far and the diverse set of backgrounds people come from. And I'm just so grateful that we have such good representation from around the world today. And I don't see any questions popping up. So, there's a question from Dr. Krishna Sri Achyutan, which is your work based primarily from, I guess, for developed countries or from? I'm not sure how that was intended.
Yeah, I can speak. Thank you, Gillian. I'm just wondering, when you say get the right permissions from people, etc., there's a whole lot of people who don't understand data and who need to be educated also. So how do you see your recommendations change or modify for those that do not have, the literate background to be able to make those conscious decisions? Is there anything that you see important to change?
Your voice is breaking a little bit, Dr. Krishna Sri, but I think we got your question. But Jillian, I'm sorry, you muted. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There we go. No, I think it is a good point. And I do think that in general, a lot of the recommendations I have sort of been targeted at the United States. That's just where I'm located. And, but I think if we're going to extrapolate to, developing countries, obviously there's sort of a different set of data ecosystems at play, but in a lot of ways, if those, let's say the statistical capacity of a country isn't necessarily fully built, that's actually a big opportunity. In some ways, it's a lot harder to sort of build these equitable data collection systems when they already are existing in the United States in sort of an imbalanced way. So if there's a system that's not necessarily in place, that's actually an opportunity to really build participation and increase people's understanding. So one thing I would say, again, would be these data trusts. They really kind of empower more of a dialogue between citizens and government, or citizens and sort of the data processor, the trust, the fiduciary, the one who's sort of holding your data for you. And again, it's sort of whoever is in that kind of the trust, if you're giving your data to them, you kind of get to decide how it's being used and things like that. So I think it will, you just get to kind of have more of a dialogue than this sort of top down, which we see at least in the United States and the European Union, of the government saying, I want this data, or a private company saying, I'm just going to take this data and hopefully, you know, maybe you won't. So I think there's a lot of opportunities actually when those capacities aren't necessarily fully there yet.
Thank you very much, Jillian. I think we should continue on to our next speaker. Thank you very much for your time and your very insightful ideas. It got me thinking of some new thoughts I had not considered. So I really do appreciate it. Our next speaker should be Rudradeb Mitra from Omdena. So let's take a look. We're gonna pin you. Just one moment. There you are.
Hi, Gilad.
The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I was listening to the previous speakers, and actually some of you are doing, to me, sounds quite interesting work. So let me briefly introduce myself. So I come from a very technical background. So I'm an AI engineer by profession and being an entrepreneur. And I started a startup, actually. I'm not from the NGO sector. It's like 3 to 4 years ago. And what I observed that in the AI sector, almost 80% of the AI solutions are never adoptable. So billions of dollars are being spent on building the solutions, but like 80% of them fail. That's really, really high number. I think it's 87% if I'm right. And the core to that is actually a lack of trust. And of course, trust leads to an ethical question, but the lack of trust is what makes the adoption of AI to be soulless. In fact, unless it's being pushed by big corporations on us, it's actually most people perhaps don't want to use it. And what I realized that the key to solving that problem, if we want people to trust solutions that are being built, is to engage communities around the world so that they can build the solutions. So instead of some engineer sitting in Silicon Valley or in Cambridge, wherever they are building the solutions that is being used by people, why not to engage the people and communities around the world who could share the data and build the solution? So they are actually, it's more transparent, it's more ethical. And that's the basic idea of that. So I started a company called Omdena. I don't know if I could share my screen. If I can, I will just quickly, I don't have a presentation, but just that we have worked, and you can see in the map that we have worked in over 65 countries in this world. And we have done over 450 projects, and both on the NGO sector, but also we worked with a lot of impact startups. To give you an example, like we recently started working with the Tanzanian government to build a solution that's the goal is to monitor mangrove conservation in Tanzania. But the key is that the solution will not be built by us or by engineers around the world, by the actually Tanzanian people. So it's a 6 months program where the first couple of months is to open, we have like already 1 chapter in Tanzania, which will open 3 more chapters, get 200 people from Tanzania, will educate them. And then these people will actually go on and build the solutions that will be used by the Tanzanian government. And that's the focus of our thing, that we create communities around the world and build the solutions. And you know, just we have worked with over, like I was just creating, we have this in the website that we have we work with a lot of, let's say, big NGOs, but also a lot of small NGOs. And my conjecture here, and I actually recently wrote an article, which I don't know if you could see that, it's why I really see that there's a huge need of development and civil society actually to start working on AI and build, otherwise they will be obsolete. And I kind of argued that during, I had a call with, I do this impact interviews, and I had a call with the CEO of Save the Children, and where we talk about why this is so urgently need for impact sector and in the NGO sector to start using AI, but more ethically, and why it is so important to engage the communities around the world to build the solutions. So that's basically what we are doing, and yeah, happy to be here and listen to all of you guys what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Rudra. If in the course of your work, I guess I imagine at this point there aren't many AI regulations that are you have to adhere to. Are there any laws or regulations that your company has to be careful of as you're doing work?
I mean, there's a data regulations, right? So the GDPR and those kind of regulations. Yes. But in terms of the AI algorithms, no, there are not. But I also do think that, you know, governments and policymakers are not equipped to make those kind of regulations, because most of them don't even understand what the algorithms are doing. So I would say that they shouldn't even try to make those regulations either.
But there is a large movement being done to educate, not necessarily the older generation, but the staffers of the offices are getting educated, and they are trying very hard to learn, because they do they do have to regulate. Would you agree that there are some risks involved?
There is a risk involved in everything. I mean, the government's making wrong policies. There's also a big risk, like, I mean, there's a risk in everything, right? So, but I do not think governments they shouldn't be regulated. My conjecture is let people build the solutions, then they will not build solutions that would be unethical. And kind of the key of AI ethics is not the algorithms, the data, because at the end we are training algorithms on data that is kind of, biased to some extent because humans have biases. So that's the whole point of ethical solutions, AI solutions. So I always say that, okay, how do we build those data which are more ethical or more taking care of the account of all the people and not kind of biased?
Yeah,
That's
that goes in a lot to what our previous speaker said, where the gap is in the data collection. And if we had enough data, then people wouldn't be harmed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, Rudra.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming and showing and very impressive work. And I already had spoken to, I've already seen your website because we had a chat the other day, but I'm quite impressed and we're looking into it. And thank you a lot for your contribution and time today. Thanks. So our next speaker is Seth Baum, sorry again. I got Seth, I know Seth's got to be right, from the Global Catastrophic Risk Institute. So Seth, floor is yours as soon as we put you up.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's great to hear all of the wonderful work that everybody's doing. I'm just going to put in the chat very briefly a quick background and contact information. As that says, we work on global catastrophic risk, which, what does that mean? It's basically if it has the potential to destroy global human civilization, we work on it. The organization is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. We do research with an orientation toward characterizing the risks and in particular, formulating practical solutions for how to reduce the risks. The risks themselves include things like climate change, nuclear warfare, pandemics, and a variety of risks associated with artificial intelligence. And as the comment in the chat says, we are part of a broader field of global catastrophic risk, and a large portion of that field is concentrated in North America and Europe, and we regret that fact. We want to have a more geographically diverse field, noting the fabulous geographic diversity of the group here today. If anybody from really anywhere in the world is interested in this field and wants to get plugged in, by all means, please feel free to reach out to me. Now, in my brief remarks here, would just like to say a few words on AI risk governance. This is a topic that we're very active on. And the first point to make is just there will always be risks. Risk we can define as just the possibility of there being some type of harm. And there's always going to be risk. We can't completely eliminate all risk. In fact, even if we could, we might not want to live in a world in which nothing could possibly go wrong. All else equal, it is better to reduce risks, but in practice, all else is typically not equal. Risk reduction takes effort. That effort could go to other things. It can have costs, and in some cases can even cause other harms. This includes the so-called risk-risk trade-offs, where efforts to reduce one risk may increase other risks. And this is a reason why it's always important to have a holistic approach to risk governance. This is especially important for the risk governance of artificial intelligence because, as probably everybody here knows very well, AI is a technology that can affect such a wide range of aspects of society, of aspects of the world, which very much includes a wide range of risks. Sometimes AI technology increases risks, sometimes it decreases risks, sometimes it does both at the same time. This can include the global catastrophic risks and other major global risks. What I would encourage for the G20 in particular is, to the extent that it has the capacity to focus on AI risk governance, I think this is very much a topic worthy of high-level policy attention. Indeed, there already is high-level policy attention to this, would be to try as much as possible to emphasize the largest risks that are affected by AI. And this is just for practical purposes. If you're going to put effort, especially high-level policy effort, into risk governance, it's better to focus on the big risks instead of the small risks. This certainly includes the global catastrophic risk, but it can also include other major global risks and so on. We certainly don't mean to claim that the global catastrophic risks are the only risks that are worth paying attention to. That's definitely not the case. But let me then give a few examples. First would be the global environmental risks. This includes climate change and related environmental issues. There is a lot of work being done to apply AI to reducing the environmental impact of global human civilization, and that's good work that should continue. At the same time, AI technology itself has an environmental impact, including from the resources needed to build the computer systems, and also from the often very large amounts of energy that are needed to power, especially the most advanced AI systems can use a lot of energy. And frankly, in many cases, it's probably not worth the energy to run some of these AI systems because of the environmental impacts that come from that. That's something that is definitely worthy of high-level policy attention. Second would be military technology in the context of global catastrophic risk. This would be especially for nuclear weapon systems. There is some use of AI in nuclear weapon systems, and in some cases it's okay, just kind of used at the margins and isn't really affecting the core risk of nuclear war. But it is important to ensure that any use of AI does not increase nuclear war risks, such as by interfering with strategic stability. Third example would be regarding pandemic pathogens. This includes the use of AI to mitigate the risks from pandemic pathogens. We have seen a variety of applications of AI technology in addressing COVID-19, a lot of great work being done there. On the other hand, it's also possible to use AI technology in biotechnology, which in the worst case, could actually facilitate the development of new pathogens. You guys have probably seen in the news that there's controversy about the origins of COVID-19. Did it come from natural origins, or was it leaked from a lab? I'm not the expert on that side of things. I don't have any particular comments on that, but what is clear is that it is possible for biotechnology R&D to create pandemic pathogens. That much is not really much of a debate, and AI, to the extent that AI can play a role in facilitating that, that's something that really merits very serious governance in order to avoid creating new pandemics, potentially even pandemics that are more severe than COVID-19. And then finally, we have risks from especially the most advanced AI platforms. These, because of their unusually high capabilities, they merit special scrutiny. This includes the most advanced current systems that exist. These are often used for a wide range of different applications, and the fact that they are so general purpose creates a distinctive policy challenge. And then also for potential future systems, we don't know how future AI technology will evolve, but we do know that it will evolve, that AI technology is not going to be frozen in time. And so it's important to ensure that any policy for AI governance in general, and certainly risk governance, is designed in a way so that the policy will remain relevant as the technology continues to evolve over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth. If I could ask you just one line, what are you most concerned about? What do you think is the largest risk that you would like us to focus on to mitigate? Because you gave a plethora of all very practical, realistic options, but I'm curious, what would you say keeps you up at night the most? What keeps you awake at night the most about AI?
About AI, okay, let me briefly start by saying that we do a lot of quantitative risk analysis, and one big theme that comes from that research is that these risks are all quite difficult to quantify. Typical risk quantification would go from historical event data. So for example, if you want to know the risk of you dying in a car crash, well, presumably you personally have never died in a car crash before, but other people have, and we have data from that. So the car insurance industry uses, et cetera, et cetera. For these larger risks, we don't have data along those lines. Unfortunately, global civilization has never previously been destroyed, right? But that's a good thing, but it does create a data challenge. And so it's hard to say which of these risks are most important, most worthy of focus. Instead, what I would say is that we should focus on the most compelling, the best opportunities to reduce the risks. Because you can often the opportunities that we have to reduce risks, you have policies that can reduce multiple risks at the same time. Or there's no exclusivity. You can do multiple policies, multiple courses of action, and they don't compete against each other, except sometimes perhaps for our attention. I apologize, that's not really answering your question, but that is the sort of perspective that I would emphasize for thinking about how to evaluate across the different risks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Seth. Our next speaker was meant to be Sundar, and Sundar, sorry, my apologies to you, and let's switch over to you. Over to you.
Hey, hi. Thanks for including me, Gilad, and pleasure meeting you guys. It's great to hear from a lot of these known folks. Specifically, I'm a fan of Gillian and Seth, and great work, and nice to hear about it. To just give you a brief, I'm a researcher and an advisor. I was part of the work group which worked on the first standard on AI fairness from TEC, Telecommunication Engineering Center. That's the first standard from an Indian context on AI and data governance. So that's the part that I wanted to speak about. I'm also a fellow of For Humanity. Ryan Carrier spoke earlier about the audit of AI systems. The point that I wanted to speak about today is about the public procurement problem, which is very less addressed from on the policy front. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes. And do we give you permission?
Yes. So I just wanted to speak about the public procurement problem. There are the primary thing is at this point in time, governments are procuring AI across spectrums for different uses, both deterministic and non-deterministic applications, both at the ML level or some of them at the AI level. Some of them are let's say, FRT and related applications. Some of them are for more processing applications. They currently do not have procurement guidelines that can take into account considerations that are more essential to protect people for whom these technologies are deployed. I think one of the major concerns that one need to be dealing with at this point in time is having clear public procurement guidelines. And from an Indian context, if you're going to be investing more in technology, whether it is in the sector of defense, whether it is in the sector of healthcare, what we need to be mindful of is that the lack of adequate policy guidelines or procurement guidelines could be really devastating. Besides the point that we need to necessarily have a data protection regulation which is robust, and we need to have audit mechanism, which is what India has traditionally adopted as an approach for any compliance. This is something that needs to be there. I'm going to be speaking about two recommendations from my side. Recommendation number one is what kind of disclosure and documentation that are required. Second is how legal clauses, terms, and notification needs to be fixed. Both of these are policies from a government procurement perspective, which is going to have significant implications on most of the actions either government do or government-funded organizations do. When I speak about documentation and disclosure, I'm speaking about the producer of AI system, producer of ML systems who are working for the government on contract should be able to produce what kind of performance measures that they have had with AI while they are building it, and what accuracy, reliability. They need to be able to establish ground truth and how they are validating those results. Ground truth are not just at the labels level, but should be at a level where it is it can be confirmed through subsequent detective approaches, even in cases where there is no ground truth that is established on certain kind of models. It's also necessary to have model cards or model scorecards disclosed, which speaks about various metrics of data considered and aspects considered. These are all basic necessities that needs to be fulfilled. From a performance measures perspective, the limitations part, there should be vulnerabilities and limitations and adverse incidents that have happened using that model need to be disclosed very clearly. People using it and government need to demand it to say what are the vulnerabilities and limitations of such systems. Not knowing the vulnerabilities can be really challenging for environments like us. Did the contractor do any ethical risk assessment? Did they do a bias risk assessment? We need to know about what declarations are they providing on those aspects, and how are they testing for resilience and robustness, right? What things they've done to test for it? How have they prepared the system to be adversarially robust? What have they done about it? Have they provided adequate guidance for humans who are going to be in the loop, and also how to interpret outcomes of the model? These are all disclosure and documentations that needs to be demanded. At this point in time, the procurement guidelines do not take care of them in any way. It's not to say that only India does not have these procurement guidelines. Across the globe, we don't have these procurement guidelines even in the Europe or in the US, which are progressing well with regulatory ambits. But what's more important is that for a country like India, it is necessary for us to spearhead that wing and then get to specific reflections. Then the second part is about clauses. There needs to be clear clauses on liability and audit rights. That will trigger a series of transactions that would help in better compliance and better AI tools or even ML tools, as the case may be. There should also be mechanism that is established for reporting on adverse incidents, bugs, breaches, or even exploits, vulnerabilities that are there. These are important from a government system perspective. When we are looking at using ML for public procurement, we need to have enough security, safety, and principles of responsible AI applied effectively. That's essentially what I wanted to share. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Sundar. I'm very impressed. Honestly, I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I had never thought of procurement guidelines at all for AI systems. Coming from the more of the research side myself, it's never even occurred to me that we need such rules and regulations for people who don't know the technology, what they should be looking for, how they should be looking at it when they're deciding if they want to purchase it or use it. So really incredible presentation. Thank you very much.
Sundar, I have a question.
Yes,
do you feel that such requirements should be tied to the technology readiness level as well? So that is also quite difficult to gauge with AI products today. Most people do not have an idea on how to really look at the technology readiness levels of these AI products that they are procuring as well.
Yeah, so these are two different degrees. What I'm saying is technology readiness level is more associated with how prepared are they to adopt a technology in certain context. What is more important is, irrespective of your journey towards maturity of how you adopt the technology and leverage them, you better have controls for you to protect the people, because these are going to be public systems that are going to be deployed for many reasons, for regulatory authorities to enforcement authorities to even municipalities, so cities. So it's better that they have mechanisms that are more evolved in structuring the concepts and constructs relating to how they deal with contractual requirements when they are procuring AI systems. That's something that I would consider as a more important priority and easily doable priority. You can execute them easily. When I say easily, I'm just saying you will be able to refine procurement guidelines and then evolve it to a certain stage for making it mandatory in these occasions and asking those disclosure mandatory. The maturity level helps in determining the thresholds that we are speaking about. Let's say if we are speaking about accuracy and a contractor expresses that their threshold is 80%, what is necessary is if the organization has maturity, they will be able to evaluate whether 80% is adequate or am I looking at 94%. That is a threshold assessment that's possible when organizations have their maturity.
Yeah, what I meant was, you clearly define, limitations, risk assessments, performance measures, etc. You very beautifully define these kind of very prominent points of check on any product. So I was wondering if, as you actually define the readiness of any technology that you're actually going after procuring, you actually have these also integrated in your checklist to be able to do that measurement of the readiness. So if you
absolutely
did, so it wasn't that measure that I mentioned that some of these should be integrated well as you assess
100%. 100%. This needs to be integrated into any ways that you're measuring for maturity, and that's necessary. That's absolutely right.
But I also feel perhaps technology is racing so fast that keeping up with these requirements really is going to take a backseat many times. So I don't know how realistic it is to really expect that.
So I'm just looking at it as a very simple process. World Bank does it. Our government procurement does it in every procurement, right? Every government has terms and conditions. And after a point in time, if we have terms and conditions, people start aligning and adhering to it. It simplifies the whole process, right? So I think it's a matter of political will and commitment to see how we are able to influence a public procurement thing, and that has a significant impact. And if India is able to do in a forum like G20, that's going to influence many other countries to follow. And at this point in time, the world does not have it. Let's start it and create an impact.
Thank you, Sundar. I'm just going to step in. We have one more quick question for you, Sundar. Could ISO rules support or interact somehow with your recommendations, or do you recommend and nurture ISO rules, or do your recommendations nurture ISO rules? I think that's how it's meant to be asked.
Yeah, the way I think is that ISO guidelines are useful, but they are very, very broad in that sense. So what I'm saying is national standards should bring in such guidance for public procurement. And we anyways have a huge repository of public procurement guideline in Indian context that's applied in every department that we work with, right? So all we need to do is to enrich that. It doesn't matter how ISO treats it, because this is more to do with country-specific approaches, and each country may have their own nuanced approaches that they have evolved over a period. They may not necessarily require an ISO kind of a standard. All they need to do is to align with their own approaches and then integrate it. The difference that I'm speaking about is India as a country which is more looks at audit as a mechanism for a lot of validation. There are countries which are looking at certification. There are countries which are looking at self-declaration. These are all different modalities. So ISO will not be able to help in that nuanced way. So what we need to look at, take up the principles and see how we are able to integrate in public procurement guidelines, and that's a significant deed.
Okay, thank you very much, Sundar. Our next speaker is, and I'm going to apologize ahead, is Domen Savic. I don't know if it's a Savic or Savic. I'm very sorry. Please forgive me.
No. You did it almost perfectly.
Almost? Okay.
Hello, everybody. You have my slides, but you don't need to show them because it's basically just like my tempo measurement system, and I'm just going to read them off on my computer. So you can watch my face a little longer. Thank you all for the invitation. I run a digital rights NGO called Citizen D. We are located in Slovenia, EU, and our, let's say, field of operation is the international sphere as well. So we work in Slovenia, but also in other EU countries. We're a member of European Digital Rights Association, and we're focusing on the intersection of technology and politics. We have three major pillars of activities. We focus on civic participation in the area. We conduct investigation in the field of information technologies in the public sphere, and we're also teaching media literacy in, let's say, different varieties, focusing on different target groups. The topic of recommendations to the G20, I was I was listening to the previous speaker, and I saw that we are basically thinking about the same things, let's say. So first recommendation would be to focus more intensively to stronger international regulatory frameworks. We're now currently seeing fragmentation of the international online civic spaces and digital economy landscapes based on non-harmonized regulatory frameworks and the so-called formation of digital oases that do not protect individuals' privacy and are enabling exploitative practices in the field of digital work and personal privacy throughout the world. Second recommendation would be less dependency on the end users. We saw that the current mostly EU-based point of legal framework development is focusing on the end user and enabling the end user. But we've seen from GDPR to e-commerce directive to e-privacy directive that we need stronger global regulatory bodies that do not rely solely on the end user activities. People are, let's say, tired, they're not qualified, and they do not possess the socio-economical capabilities to pursue their rights in the matters of personal data protection and other fields of human rights in the digital economy, to their, I'm not going to say bitter end, but to the end, because it takes too much time, it takes too much effort, it requires specific skills, and that's another issue, that this field is so fragmented and not, I'm going to say, functional. And the last recommendation would be that we need more civic society inclusion in digital policy building. We have to be aware that digital sphere, digital economy, whatever you may call it, does not exist solely in the bridge between private industry and decision makers. We need stronger binding international agreements that will normalize and enable the civic society in the decision-making processes and make their voices not only heard, but also that these voices, that the civic society, the civic society ideas would be actually implemented in the decision-making process. So it's not just about, okay, we can hear the civic society out and then we're going to go our way, but that we have actually binding forms or binding processes that enable the civic society to have its voice heard and enabled during the discussion. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Noman. I want to just say first that I 100% love what you said about the end user being required to do too much. That has been on my mind for a very long time now. And I would love to ask if you have any resources or frameworks or initiatives that have been taken up to change that. Because right now, the end user, essentially, we're just like the end user license agreement. Anytime you want to use anything, you get this giant block of text and you're like, yeah, whatever, I need to use it. So I click, click, click. And then later on, it's your fault because you didn't know. Or when you get phished, when you get scammed, it's your fault because you fell for it. That's not really right. I mean, it's like, go ahead. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. Let me ask you.
Good question. And the answer is sadly no, because the entire, or let's say the majority of digital economy is geared towards the relationship between the end user and the procurer of services. It's actually counterproductive in the way that you've mentioned just now, but it's also like, I get the feeling that people have this bad vibe when we're talking about controlling agencies, or we're talking about some agencies that would be there to represent groups of users. But that has to just plainly, it has to stop. We have to go back to the drawing board, and we have to rethink these concepts, because as you mentioned, you know, EULA or end users agreements are now representing the sole point of compliance, and at the same time, you know, nobody reads them. Everybody agrees with them because the platforms are becoming more and more of a necessity and not actually a choice. And in that regard, the user is not even presented with an option, right? And what's even more worrying is that whenever you are focused with an issue related to these platforms, you can see, and I'm coming from, let's say, a smaller EU member state, you can see that the specific or particular areas of European Union, of other, let's say, global landscapes, they don't even have an agency to complain to, or if they have, you know, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and basically in the end, it's a gamble, right? You can't even, you're not even sure if your complaint is going to work or not, because it's all in the hands of private entities. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Domen. I don't see any questions. And our other questioner, Dr. Krishnashree, did you have something you wanted to ask before I keep going? She's saying no, she's muted still. Sorry.
Yeah, nothing specific. I think I really concur with Domen's suggestions in that. I think we really need to make it inclusive. But I think what does inclusivity really mean? I think several of these phrases that we are using need better definitions to start off with. That's my personal take on things, whether when you're talking about quality, data, etc., multi-stakeholder participation, how deep, how much, have they been very good examples of this? That also is something that we want to be able to explore, to be able to share with everybody. So I really would like to request all of our participants today to also share that with us in case that, you feel that some of these have been, relatively well solved or addressed, and things like that.
If I can just comment on the issue, like in relations to the current topic, like the artificial intelligence and big data collections and stuff like that, it's often like I get the feeling that the public debates and even media reports that are framing these discussions or these topics are, presenting the situation in a completely black and white version, right? So on one hand, you have all-encompassing, all-inclusive society, which is almost impossible to achieve, and on the other hand, you have a very bleak, a very authoritarian, almost artificial intelligence society or digital economy society. But that doesn't paint a very fair or even practical picture, because in reality, you see constantly that the playing field is not leveled at all, and is geared towards big companies on one side and decision makers on the other side, right? So gaining traction in this inclusiveness of, let's say, the civic society would be a starting point where everybody or people would figure out or would see that this is actually taking place and that they can participate as well. Because right now, every time we're talking about civic participation, we expect that all of the society would jump at the possibility of being included, while in reality, we need like step-by-step basis of inclusiveness, giving good examples and telling people, look, this happened because of civic participation. And this is not happening right now. I mean, if you look at the recent scandal in the Netherlands with the artificial intelligence systems that were unfairly judging people based on their racial criteria and other issues in regards to social funds. You can see that, you know, these are problems that are very deep, that are very, on the other side, incorporated in public AI systems, and that can only be resolved with, you know, people actually participating in decision-making processes, maybe even one by one, and sort of helping or preventing these types of situations from ever happening again. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Oh,
if I can just comment on the chat. So what does inclusive decision making means? I mean, if you look at elections, or if you look at you know, civic engagements in terms of policy development, at least in the European Union, you can see that this means, you know, opening the floor or giving the floor to representatives from the civic society, from NGOs, from, you know, even media outlets, from expert groups, and sort of include their opinions on the topic. And this needs to happen not as an afterthought or not after something goes wrong, but, you know, before anything starts happening. So this process should be finished by the time, you know, the government or other decision-making bodies decides on how they're going to solve or address an issue. And that decision-making process, or that final decision, is backed by, you know, previously incorporated opinions from civic groups and other actors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. So our next speaker is Konrad Lobser, I hope, where innovation serves humans. So Konrad, the floor is yours soon as we see you. Yeah, there you are.
Thank you so much. So I'm the founder and executive director of WISH, and we're a civil society organization that supports and promotes independence and work quality for social entrepreneurs. We focus specifically on entrepreneurs that provide sustainable and accessible and affordable or free internet connectivity. And specifically in rural and informal settlement areas, where fiber and mobile networks have continually under-provisioned over the past 2 decades. So we find and help and support these entrepreneurs, and their work lays the foundation for access to technology in their communities. And we also try to link them up with community development organizations, of which there is a distinct lack. We specifically focus on people who are not mobile in the workplace, so as to maximize the chances of impact in their own communities and not lead to brain drain to urban areas. So there are a lot of strong existing licensing and policy lobbies. The one that I'm closest to is one supported by the Internet Society that focuses on community networks. I feel there's still a lot of work to do there. But my question to this group is, I mean, considering that according to the best data that I could find, rural communities comprise 43% of the world population, and urban informal settlements 14%. So my question is, how many technical standards and metrics are there that the technology used by people in these areas feed into? So a practical example of the entrepreneurs that we support, they install networking equipment. The networking equipment can track how many connections there are, and to a large extent where those connections are. But we have a good platform to test standards or metrics. I feel that funding and support to the community development organizations and social entrepreneurs could be greatly improved if there was something like the accounting standards, but more to track the impact. I know there's proof of impact is a buzzword, but it's very difficult to find any practical data or standards or applications that can be used for that. So just that, thanks.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much. Is it Conrad? Can you tell us how to pronounce your name?
That's right. It's Afrikaans, so it's Koenraad.
Koenraad. Is that close?
Yes, that's
all right.
correct.
Koenraad.
Yes.
Are there any questions for Koenraad from our chat or the audience? So I think what we'll do, Koenraad, is we'll try to follow up with, we're taking notes on what everyone has said. And since you posed a question to the group, what I would like to do in our follow-up is we'll try to have disseminate the questions and the ideas and have a group discussion as a follow-up. I hope that's okay.
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I would ask our my colleague, Miss Allison Richards, who is our international coordinator for our C20 group, to please give us some concluding remarks and also show us what the next steps are for our TST Technology, Security, and Transparency Working Group. I do just want to take one quick second to thank everybody who came tonight, who spoke, who shared their views. I learned a lot, and I hope other people found it productive. We will find a way to keep everyone in touch who wants to stay in touch. We have a Telegram group you can join, but we'll also look into an email distribution so that those who want to share ideas, events, concepts can continue to stay in touch, and we can take this forward. So Allison, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for everyone. I really want to just say that I learned a lot from everyone. We really, really value your participation because we really want to represent whatever you're saying to the G20. This is the beginning of a dialogue, a policy dialogue. We would love to stay connected with you. I wanted to mention that we have a link here, and we will send this out in an email to all of you. We have a number of upcoming events. This is the kickoff on AI for the policy week, but we also have one that's coming up on Wednesday that will be, we have one on cybersecurity, on security. We have one that's technology for empowerment. There's also one around transparency, trust, and disinformation. So if those are interesting for you, we would invite you back. We know it's a big chunk of time, but we are going to continue this dialogue moving forward, and we'll be having a number of other upcoming events that will be happening in April and culminating with a face-to-face in Coimbatore in India in May, which will most likely be a hybrid conference. But if you would like to come directly and potentially speak there, please let us know. And the other thing I would like to say is we will send you the link for this so that you can register. But on our website, all of the events are listed, but there's also an Udaharan template where you can input a case study of what you're doing and how that could be scaled to other places. So you can also submit policy recommendations online, and you can register for our events. So I'll just close very quickly saying thank you for your time. We're sorry if we went a few minutes over time, and we really, really appreciate all of your collaboration to represent CSOs, NGOs to the G20 and get policy recommendations. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions or wants to know anything, you can email us. All the emails we send you, you can just reply to them. They go to our TST. I forgot, I don't have the email memorized, but you just reply to whatever email you got from us, and we're going to read it, and we will absolutely stay in touch. And we'll work on a distribution mailing list so that everyone can stay in touch and share ideas. Thank you all so much for this wonderful session.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.